A bittersweet day around the league as it is final cutdown day. Final rosters have been set around the league as it goes with the Cincinnati Bengals. Not a ton of surprises, but there are a couple of guys you would hope that would, maybe you felt they made their claim to the roster and they didn't get on the final roster, but the Bengals may work their magic. We do this every year, inevitably. We say this every year. This guy's not going to make it through waivers. There's no way he's going to make it through waivers. And some of these preseason heroes, these training camp heroes, they inevitably make it through waivers. They make it on a practice squad, and the rest is history, as they say. I'm Anthony Cosenza. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, coming at you courtesy of Cincy Jungle and that podcast network. Happy to be talking with you. I know there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of material, quality material out there. We appreciate you tuning in live, tuning in after the fact, whatever the case may be, to get our take and at least the information on the roster and what's happening with the Cincinnati Bengals going forward. And hello, everybody. I see Lindsay. I see Ralph. I see Mark. I see Matthew from France. Wow. Rob. Hey, there you go. I like it. Good to see all of you. Thank you for joining us. Hey, look, like I said, not a ton of surprises. Actually, some surprises, you could say, actually point to good news. And I'll pull up here and I will pin this in the live chats for you. And so you can check it out as we go. I will share the screen, of course, but I will pin this so you can check it out on cincyjungle.com. You can go a lot of places too to get the 53-man roster. I won't lie, but hey, got to self-serve a little bit here and give you some home flavor there. We got to pull that back up for you. But look, some of the surprises were on the good side in a way, because you see that Joseph Osai, obviously, not on IR, that sort of thing. We kind of heard some trickling over the past couple of days that he and his ankle injury was a high ankle sprain, the dreaded high ankle sprain that could take a while to heal. So while that's not, there's a danger of him missing week one, that sort of thing, but that doesn't necessarily, the fact that he's on the active roster, the final roster here, that's good news. And a couple of other guys, DJ Ivey did play well throughout the preseason, throughout the summer, and to see him on the roster, that's good news. But some other guys that the Bengals are getting, some tough cuts were made today. Tough cuts. And here we go again for you. And I will pin this here. I accidentally X'd out. That's my bad, guys. My bad. Here's in both the YouTube and Facebook chats for you. Here is the link. So look, we'll go through it here. And as we heard earlier in the day, Devin Asiasi did not make the team at tight end. We thought maybe if the Bengals were going to go 4 deep at tight end, maybe Tanner Hudson did enough to stick on the team, but apparently not. And I'm sure that's a guy that the Bengals are going to try and get on the practice squad. So here's kind of the outlook here, the 53-man roster as we know it here. And hopefully you can see all this. Quarterback, of course, Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. We're still waiting for Burrow to return to practice and maybe even a contract extension. We will see. We heard earlier in the day that Trevor Siemian was not going to be not only making the team, but not going to be making it as a third quarterback or anything like that. So Jake Browning is the developmental guy behind Joe Burrow. And really, he did do the most of all the guys on, in preseason to show that he deserves that backup spot for who was here. There were reports that Reed Sinnett is going to be a guy that the Bengals are going to try to get on the practice squad. They really seem to like him and think there's potential there. So, we'll look for that. Running back, here we go. They went with the 4. We were a little unsure maybe about Travion Williams, about Chris Evans. So good news on Travion Williams, the ankle injury that's been bugging him all summer, all preseason. He is on the final roster. Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, Travion Williams, Chris Evans. And then, of course, wide receiver, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Trenton Irwin, Charlie Jones, and Andre Yusivas. Look, they went 6 at wide receiver. 6. So no Stanley Morgan, special team staple. And, a lot of the, Irwin did enough last year, showed enough again this summer to make it no Trent Taylor. So it's Charlie Jones time, and Charlie Jones is probably going to get a shot as the team's return man, at least on punts going forward. That's where the Bengals have the shakeup there at wide receiver. So, maybe not surprises, but familiar faces we're saying goodbye to. Tight end, Irv Smith, Mitchell Wilcox, Drew Sample. This was a surprise area. They went a little, especially going, 6 at wide receiver, then they go light at tight end because they go a little heavier in the trenches here. And Orlando Brown Jr., Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Capagione Williams, your starters right there. And then they keep sharp, and Cody Ford makes the roster despite, there were some good plays this preseason, some shaky ones, but despite really the concussion issue, that was maybe putting some of us thought, that could put his position on the final roster in jeopardy. Did not. Trey Hill makes the team. They love his versatility inside. Deontay Smith, the very versatile guy, and Jackson Carman. Odd man out there is Hakeem Adeniji, the guy who has started, I think it was 15 games, something like that, has played a number of different spots on the offensive line, was a guy who was drafted in the Jim Turner era. So, they made a lot of different moves these past couple of seasons at both tackle positions. Hakeem Adeniji just on his way out. And so we'll see what happens with him. But that was one of the familiar names, the bigger names, I guess, on this team that you could say they said goodbye to. DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Josh Tupou, Zach Carter, Jay Tufele makes it. Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, Joseph Osai, Cam Sample, Miles Murphy. Now, when you look at it, obviously you go, well, yeah, those are the usual suspects. Those are who we expected to make it. But no Dominique Davis, who had an outstanding preseason. No Raymond Johnson, who was the 3rd rated edge rusher in all of preseason throughout the entire NFL. So those are 2 tough cuts. And those are where those chants of they're not going to make it through waivers. They're not going to make it through waivers. That's where some of those chants are going to be coming from. And so, look, again, tough decisions being made there. The Bengals are going to try and scramble to get some of these guys back on the practice squad. Linebacker was pretty set. You know who we haven't been talking a lot about is this guy, just total side note. But not a lot of chatter about this guy, be it, with the team or, on podcasts really, or, we're talking a lot about Pratt and Wilson and, Bailey on special teams. We've talked about Bocce. Akeem Davis-Gaither, just not a guy that we've talked about a lot, but he could quietly be a really nice supplemental defensive piece for this year, for this defense this year. So, I'm hoping he takes another nice step in his development going forward. One of my favorite picks from his respective draft class there. But Pratt, these are the usual suspects here. And then you go defensive back. A lot of, when you spend a 2nd round pick on DJ Turner, he's going to make the team. DJ Ivy beats out Alan George. We kind of felt like, based on the preseason performances, based on the spring and summer performances from Ivy, that he was going to get that job. And I know that the coaches liked Alan George. They like the potential there, but Ivy just has shown too much to be cast off there, and he'll be one of the back end guys in that cornerback group. So you go Chidobe Awuzie, Cam Taylor-Britt, Mike Hilton, DJ Turner, Jalen Davis makes it, and DJ Ivy as your corners. And then the defensive backs, Dax Hill, Nick Scott, Tyson Anderson, who had that outstanding first game in the preseason with 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick 6, and Jordan Battle making it as the safeties, making a you see this gentleman right here, Michael Thomas, tough cut. They call him Uncle Mike. and great locker room guy, great leader, veteran guy. Has played a long time in the NFL, and I know the Bengals love him. And because of the newer rules with practice squad eligibility and everything like that, meaning longer tenured veterans. This changed just a handful of years ago. Longer tenured veterans can be on the practice squad, that sort of thing. Maybe that's somebody they look to bring back in that capacity. And then, of course, you look at the special teamers, Evan McPherson, who had just an insane preseason. Absolutely insane. I think he was perfect on every single kick, including ones from like 58. Insane preseason for Evan McPherson. So hopefully that bleeds over into the regular season. Brad Robbins wins the punter job. Cal Adamitis, your long snapper, which was a trend after taking over for the great Clark Harris last year after Harris broke his wrist in the opener in that wacky game against the Steelers. Robbins beats out Chrisman. You kind of knew when you have a draft pick as a punter, especially on a deep team, that's the guy they're going to try and give every opportunity to win the job. Drew Chrisman became a fan favorite this summer, doing the DoorDash and delivering food to lesser fortunate around the greater Cincinnati area, downtown Cincinnati area. So it's real tough to see him go there. But, Chrisman was a guy that the Bengals hung on to for a while too, off on the, practice squad, all that kind of stuff as Huber fended him off. And then he had his opportunity last year, up and down. And then, of course, the issues with the hang time in the AFC Championship game kind of left a little bit of a sour taste into this year, but he did everything. And then, unfortunately, also for Chrisman, he couldn't really make this as stiff of a competition as he would like to have because he was in the hospital with stuff. So you look here, I mean, you kind of saw the writing on the wall with Robbins making the team and all of that. But, again, not a ton of surprises. I guess your big surprises for me. Tanner Hudson, I thought, did everything, played his guts out to get on this team. And he had a concussion that caused him to miss the second preseason game there. And then, of course, I mentioned Dominique Davis, Raymond Johnson, those guys, real tough cuts, I'm sure. Stanley Morgan, a tough cut. And so, this is a great point here from Zach Hicks. Wouldn't surprise me if the Patriots go after Stanley Morgan. Belichick loves former Bengals players, and not only former Bengals players, but former Bengals players who do the dirty work, Matthew Slater, right? It has been on his team forever. So he loves those types of guys, and Stanley Morgan could be, oddly enough, I think, even though they're not related, the elder Stanley Morgan from the 80s, I think, was on the Patriots too. So that's kind of a funny twist of fate. But good point there by Zach. We'll see what happened there. I don't really like going here, Rob, just because I don't know, but I don't think it was ever really fully revealed what was going on with Chrisman and why he was in the hospital. I think what was said was, at most, there was some sort of health issue that he has been dealing with since childhood, and that it kind of reared its ugly head, I guess, recently, and that's what caused him. So it stinks for him. It really does, because I know he had an uphill battle with Robbins coming into the fold and everything, but just situations out of his control also prevented him from making it the competition that that it should have been. Here's a question here. Do you think that a person getting cut gets the "we're going to sign you to the practice squad" conversation if the team wants to keep him? Yeah, I mean, yes. I think it's kind of a little bit like, I think it's, you can relate it a little bit to like at the end of the draft, when there's certain guys that, you're getting close to the end of the draft, and then teams reach out saying, "Hey, we're not going to pick you, but we really want you on our undrafted free agent." You get a priority undrafted free agent type of situation. And then those guys almost prefer, at that point, way late into the 7th round, they almost prefer, some of them, and depending on the team, obviously, they almost prefer to not get picked so that they can maybe pick and choose from, they get a little bit of the control of where they go, right? So I think I think if you've watched Hard Knocks and stuff like that, I mean, they've mentioned, "Hey, we're going to try and get you on the practice squad," that sort of thing. I think they have that conversation with some of these guys. And now how how well received that is, yeah, it's a tough day, right? It's a kick to the groin, kick to the gut, whatever. And it's a tough day for some of these guys in here. And well, we're going to try and get you on the practice squad, but you weren't good enough to go on the active roster. Might be a tough pill to swallow for some of these guys, particularly veterans. But I do think, I mean, at least they would probably do that to try and say, hey, we're prioritizing you to still stick with this team in some capacity. So yeah, I mean, I think they would do that, and I think the Bengals still do that there. So as we look at it here, and I'd love to hear from the live chatters here. Hi Shay, good to see you. I'd love to hear from the live chatters, but there are a couple of positions where you can make argument. Look, again, I didn't do my full homework, but I know at least last year, I'm trying to think back to 21 and 2020, but I know 2019 and at least 2022, the Bengals made moves after final cuts to add other guys on their roster, right? Samaje Perine was one in 2019. Last year, you had Devin Asiasi, and so they've done this before. As you look at the roster, where might be the places that this occurs? Where do they add? Who do they take away? Running back. How confident are they in these three at this point? I think they like all of them. I think they like the potential with Chris Evans. I think they like what Travion. I mean, they held the belief that with Travion after Samaje Perine left in free agency that this was going to be the kind of the next guy, hopefully to vie for that backup spot to Mixon. Chase Brown's shown some nice things in the preseason. Evans flashes, but also frustrates. The thing is with these two guys too, and this may be why they went a little, I guess it's heavy. 4. I mean, you could make an argument for 3, but I mean 4 is kind of a standard at running back. Maybe where they went a little lighter in some other spots here is because these guys also give you kick return ability. Chris Evans, Travion Williams. They need to develop that further, but they've returned kicks for this team. So, that may be, a little bit of a 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing. And then, of course, you look at tight end. These are the 3 I know that the Bengals really like, but you could maybe get, this is what they did last year. I think if I remember correctly, they had 3 and then they got Devin Asiasi and made some roster moves there. So this may be one where they say, hey, we're going to add a 4th guy here that's floating out there. You look at, I don't think any of these guys, maybe a Trey Hill, if he's one of the last guys in, or Cody Ford, if he's one of the last guys in, maybe these guys, get the boot if there's another player out there the Bengals seem to like. And then again, I go here, Joseph Osai, big situation here with these 3 players, and they're all interrelated. Joseph Osai has that high ankle sprain. I mentioned that. Then you have potentially next guy up, Cam Sample, and then your rookie who needs a lot of development. We've seen that this preseason. Myles Murphy needs time. The talent's there, the get-off's there, but he needs to develop pass rushing moves. He needs to, he's a younger guy. He needs to mature. And I mean that physically. He needs to just kind of mature as he's a younger guy comparative to some of these other guys. But now if Osai does miss week 1 with a high ankle sprain or gets limited or that sort of thing, excuse me, these guys are going to have to come up with extra snaps and be productive. So the Osai situation, kind of bleeds into these 2, and, there's a ripple effect there. Those are kind of the areas I see where, the Bengals could make a move here. Maybe Browning, if they look at the waiver wire and they see, a different quarterback out there that they want to maybe take a chance on. Maybe that's the route they go. But that is your roster for right now. And I mean, you look at it, I feel like it's a solid grouping that, I know there are guys that are, the undrafted guys or kind of the underdogs that played really, really well in the preseason. It was more, for me, it was more, whose spot are they actually going to take? I mean, you would have to, potentially for Dominic Davis, does he replace Tufele? Because you probably can't keep both. And so who do you trust a bit more? Well, Tufele played well in spot start duty last year when DJ Reader had the knee injury. So maybe that's who they trust a little bit more at this point, even with Davis playing really, really well in the preseason. Same thing with Raymond Johnson, who you're not gonna give the boot to your first round pick, right? And they really like Cam Sample. But I guess, like I said, it's encouraging news on the injury front, at least with Travion Williams, Joseph Osai landing there instead of, an IR or something like that. But there are probably some nuances that I'm leaving out with that to do that. But regardless, yeah, I mean, Matthew here, Murphy is clearly a raw product. Yeah, at this point, you are correct. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't, as Dan notes here, nothing earth-shattering here in terms of mega surprises. But what I was getting at with the young guys, Dominic Davis, Raymond Johnson, that sort of thing, it is a byproduct, an unfortunate byproduct for those guys. It is a byproduct of the Bengals having a very, very sound and solid roster. The fact that they've got high picks in a lot of places and or talented guys, free agents. And this is also a byproduct of them being more proactive in outside free agency. They're bringing in talented guys from the outside. So there's not a lot of room for, even if they are talented undrafted guys, even if they are talented, underdog stories and have shined in the preseason, there just maybe isn't room because this roster's in a good shape, a good condition right now. Yeah. Victor, good to see you. Good to see you. I like seeing a lot of familiar names. I like seeing a lot of new names. Welcome to all of you again. I'm Anthony Cosenza. In case you are new here, this is the Orange and Black Insider, part of the Cincy Jungle Podcast Network. And this is a Bengals podcast, in case you stumbled upon it by accident or something. You could, at the corner there, you can click the show icon on the YouTube channel to subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. And of course, you can give a big thumbs up to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. All of the stories are pinned there. We stream most of our shows there as well. And then, of course, if you like what we do on this channel, on our show and all of that, you got to catch all of the other shows on the Cincy Jungle Podcast channel, including Coach Speak and Chalk Talk from the Coach Matt Minnick, Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin, and our show, which I usually do. We do some crossover stuff with those guys, but it's usually John Sheeran and myself. John a little tied up today, so doing his thing over at the Great A to Z Sports, writing and everything there. So understandable that he is a little tied up, but want to take the air and at least go over the roster, talk about some surprises, and then talk about some areas wherein the Bengals may, I'm almost at the point now where I'm expecting them to bring in someone off of the waiver wire. Maybe it's their own guys and they bring, whatever. I mean, obviously, yeah. But I'm talking about an outside guy that just seems to be a trend. And I know that goes against a little bit of what I was saying with the status of the roster and having these undrafted guys not make the team because of the quality of the players they already have here. But I do think there are some positions to look at. There are some spots to look at where you say, there's maybe a guy out here. Maybe they played against him this preseason and they were impressed. There may be an opportunity here for an improvement on an already strong enough roster. What's my take on Irv Smith? Michael asks. Not really sure. I mean, it's a broad question, but I mean, I guess what my take on him is that he's had injury issues, but the talent is there, the athleticism is there, and he has also been forced in Minnesota to kind of share the workload a lot. So when you look at his production, it's not overly high because he's been paired with Rudolph and, of course, Justin Jefferson and a lot of guys who are getting high target shares. So, my take on him is I think Minnesota just kind of scratched the surface a little bit. And then, of course, unfortunate events in the form of injuries and that sort of thing have kind of prevented it too. But I think with Burrow, I think in a system that, could potentially suit him well, like this one, he'll be down the pecking order of targets, but he is kind of the main tight end guy. So I think, you could see a career year from Irv Smith in this offense, and maybe, he'll be able to parlay that like Hayden Hurst did and do a nice contract for himself, whether it's in Cincinnati or elsewhere again next year. But um, I'm excited for him. I do have some, concerns because of the injuries. And I think that's also when you go back to the Bengals keeping just Irv Smith, Drew Sample, and Mitchell Wilcox. I think that's where the waiver wire area makes the most sense. Now, who gets sacrificed and from what position group, I don't know. But it's a thin group. Drew Sample, who's kind of playing more of an H back / tight end role, the old Ryan Hewitt-ish type of role. He he's had injury issues as well in the past. He's missed significant amounts of time. Mitchell Wilcox is, coming off of an issue, and he had surgery this offseason for it. But I think that's a thin position they may, which is odd because Ossie was cut, and he was a guy they brought in off the waiver wire last year. So I guess my thing with that is, I'm to kind of bring this question full circle. I'm excited about Irv Smith. I think there is a lot there to really be excited about in this offense, but I do think the Bengals may need to have some sort of contingency plan in place. Maybe that is a Tanner Hudson if you're able to stash him on the practice squad, and if an injury, God forbid, does occur to someone, he's the guy. But we have yet to see how all of that is going to play out there. But yeah, I mean, Bengals roster's looking pretty good, and not a lot of holes necessarily. I think there's some questions on backup positions, and then of course how mature can how quickly can the safeties mature? Battle, Hill, Anderson, namely. Scott's got a big being the mentor there. He's got a big role on this team. And that is the production that they are replacing at that position is notable. So they're going to need to step up not only there, but the other areas of the defense will need to step up. Hopefully get a little more pass rush production on the defensive line to ease that transition in the secondary and in the safety spots. But that being said, we're going to get out of here in just a couple minutes. Again, I'll pull it up for you guys here just so we have one last look at the roster again. And I've said this a lot about Darren Simmons, and I said, he's a guy who's always going to get his say. He's always going to have he's going to pound the table for some guys at certain positions, and obviously he does so with the specialists. But I'm talking more about, back end wide receiver, back end running back, back end tight end. I think that's why Wilcox was one of the guys they brought back, and he made the team. I think he trusts him on special teams. But, again, he didn't really seem to get much of his way. I mean, he got a little bit here with Charlie Jones, who brings returnability, but didn't. I mean, maybe this was his way, but I guess I'm looking at it and I see no Stanley Morgan, who I know this team loved, this coaching staff loved, even though the numbers and production on the stat sheet weren't there. The contributions, the dirty work, all that kind of stuff. He was just a valuable guy to have around. And I know he and, the big three were pretty tight, Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. So you look at that. And then, of course, I guess he got his way here, did Darren Simmons, with some returnability at the running back positions with Travion Williams and Chris Evans, but no Michael Thomas. So there's two ways to look at it. And maybe the truth is in the middle, right? Either he got his way and he likes what he has seen from on special teams from Tyson Anderson, Jordan Battle, Charlie Jones, Yossi Vosh, Wilcox, right? All these guys. So maybe he did get his way, or because now the Bengals have on their team higher, draft picks, not necessarily undrafted free agents and all these other guys. They have draft picks and investments they have made in the draft at their positions. Some of the guys that were kept around as undrafted guys, your Stanley Morgans, et cetera, the sacrifices were made a little bit on the special teams area. It's probably, the truth is probably in the middle. I think he's obviously comfortable, Darren Simmons, with these guys on special teams and doing things for him. But there were, Michael Thomas gone, Stanley Morgan gone. I mean, those are tough cuts. And I know Thomas is up there in age and NFL experience, but those are tough. It's a tough day for sure. For sure. Yeah. Sailors did get cut, Rick. Sailors did get cut. He looked good in that last game. Did a couple of nice things through the air and on the ground. I wonder if that's a guy they're going to try and get back on the practice squad as well. So I thought I was impressed with him the final week against Washington there. He unfortunately did not make it, but again, not a ton of surprises. Not a ton of surprises in terms of, whoa, wow, this veteran got cut. This former high pick got cut. It's more, again, special team staples. A couple of guys who were, undrafted or brought in on long shot type of things and really balled out in preseason. So we're really, for me, I'm really interested to see what happens with Dominique Davis. I'm really interested to see what happens with Tanner Hudson. Really interested to see what happens with Raymond Johnson. Those three guys were three of your better players in all of the preseason. And there seemed like there's, some talent there to work with. But tough day, but it's an exciting day because we're getting so close to the regular season, and this roster looks pretty stacked for the Bengals. Looks stacked. But it's also a tough day because, I've coached before, and cutting a person, cutting a kid, cutting a player is the worst part of the job. There's nothing even close to it. And so this day is a bittersweet day. Again, getting real close to week one, getting real close to what looks to be a really, really promising Bengals season. But, you're talking about guys' jobs and livelihoods and futures that are in question, that sort of thing. It's tough day. But Bengals, not a ton of surprises on their roster. You saw the roster a couple times there. Go check it out on cincyjungle.com, where you can get all your Bengals news, opinions, analysis, your podcasts, as I mentioned earlier, like this one. And, of course, go check out what my guy John's doing at A2ZSports.com. And, hey, we're going to be back tomorrow night. He and I will be back tomorrow night to talk more about this a little bit more in depth and some other things as the practice squad develops, what's ahead for some of the players as the regular season gets kicking off here. We're in the middle of also bringing in some special guests. We're finalizing those, including, previews for AFC North teams, other Bengals previews from some high profile guests and everything. So we're gonna get those booked and set up for you. We have a couple of on our YouTube channel, at least a couple of other fun videos that have come out recently, and we're going to try and make those into series. One on Joey Porter being one of the Bengals' biggest villains, and of course, splicing up from a couple of other episodes, some of the potential breakout players, as well as we do player previews on cincyjungle.com. Those will be on there to be able to click on the article. You can click the video on the article and check all that stuff out. I appreciate all of you tuning in live. We have a lot of live viewers across a number of different platforms. That is awesome. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you tuning into this show live after the fact, all of the support that you continually show myself and John Sheeran. We have a lot of fun doing this for you. Hopefully you enjoy what we bring to you on this program and on all of the podcasts at Cincy Jungle. We will talk soon. You guys all have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll be back at it with a lot of different shows this week. I mentioned some of the other stuff we put up on YouTube. We'll be doing listener questions, like I said, previews, guests, all that kind of stuff. We'll be bringing it to you. Appreciate all of you. Take care. We'll see you soon.